Battle for Student Press Freedom by Walter Bound. When writing becomes a weapon against you. I don't want to tell the story, but I have to tell it. To my former students, the editors at the school newspaper, and just as a captured spark of history, a document saying, yes, this did happen. That's a principal reason why we write, right? The historical impulse. I fear this story, however, shall become another removed piece of the Jenga tower in education, poked out by people who, allegedly on paper, alas, should know better. I'll let you judge the professionalism of the school administration last year during National Writing Month in November. The objective for NaNoWriMo is clear, or was clear. Every story matters. Let's start writing yours. But first, allow me to retreat a few months before NaNoWriMo. I was called into the principal's office. This was becoming a thing. Not sure what to label or define, how to define such things. Someone allegedly told the principal, an unnamed informer, that I had an essay published gaining attention. It was a humorous piece my wife and I co-wrote aimed at adults if sex had fouls like in football. It was satire and it was pretty funny. But the principal said he'd seen it and didn't think it was appropriate for a teacher to write about such topics. He seemed to think I was obsessed with talking about sex, even implying I discussed it excessively in class. I don't want to have to question your students about this, he said. I asked who had reported the article, but he wouldn't tell me, even when I pressed through the union. I honestly suspect there wasn't anyone else. Perhaps it was petty jealousy, and why must I need to assign a motive? I agreed to write under a pen name. The union could not help me. The moral clause. So I was reborn as Thomas W. Camden, my middle name, first name initial, and the city of birth, Camden, New Jersey. When teaching, writing becomes a story worth writing. I have been the advisor for the school newspaper for 25 years, a publication that has won many national and state awards. As a writer, I encourage all writers. I also support the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and the freedom of the press. Remember that. One of my journalists, a junior, was funny and an aspiring creative writer. He loved discussing Shakespeare. One day in October last year, he said, Mr. Bound, I would love to interview you for November Novel Writing Month. I agreed. Anything I can do to get kids to write, right? Or so I thought. I felt comfortable writing about this now, as I'm no longer teaching in a public high school. But since I'm still passionate about writing instruction, I've been teaching at East Stroudsburg University as an adjunct in Northeast Pennsylvania. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We talked for half an hour about NaNoWriMo. He wrote the piece, I read it, and the editors read it, gave feedback, edits. The students are the leaders. I'm the advisor, the teacher. They apply what I teach about reporting and writing, media, desktop publishing, Photoshop. They're the ones who come up with the article ideas, like NaNoWriMo. The article went online. The staff used to publish a printed version every month, but the staff last year decided on a new format, a school magazine published in full color 4 times a year with 2 special editions. It was a serious operation, one that took time, effort, and love. Since I was also on the staff in the late 1980s, this was personal. In 1999, I took the reins from my former journalism teacher, Mr. Sunheimer. The administration has legal prior review rights. For most of my career, that had never really been a thing. But then an article may have made a previous superintendent angry with an article about oversized English classrooms when the school did not hire for retirement. It was factual, and he claimed I was practicing bad journalism. I just so happened to have the state award by my side from the Garden State Scholastic Press Association for overall excellence in Division A, the top ranking. The journalist editor of the piece, a junior, went to college in D.C., and the admissions office loved her piece. She's now in media. Truth may be just in the hands of the beholder. But the NaNoWriMo piece had been approved, all green lights. For years, the administration didn't even know we published online, even though they paid the invoice for school newspapers online. And I sent weekly emails to the staff and faculty to check out the latest iteration online. Then, a month or two later, after the article was published, I received an email out of the blue, a bolt from the blue, from my supervisor saying they wanted to talk about an online article. I thought, okay. At the time, I was on my way to close on our vacation home in the Poconos in northeast Pennsylvania. I had that day off, and my daughter, Sarah, 22, was with me. She was excited to see the new house. What could this be? What article? Everything got approved, I'm thinking, telling my daughter. Even though I was excited, I kept thinking, trouble. I couldn't think of anything controversial that was online. I was wondering what was going on. Just another thing, right? It was rather dampening a great day. But damp soon gave way to deluge. Aristotle's Climax becomes an administrative crisis. While eating breakfast that morning with my daughter, I took a call on my private phone from my administrator. I needed to take down the article about National Writing Month. I was a little annoyed. Can I take care of this when I'm back in Jersey? Like back at work the next day? Yes. Okay. On the next day, I discovered, shocked is more appropriate, that the entire school newspaper, the website, all of it, even the past 10 years worth of essays and articles was down, quote, for maintenance. Orwell. Not just the National Writing article. I then found the crux of the issue, the word climax, and the probability that the entire article was a euphemism, my word, or an extended metaphor, my words, for sex. What the heck? Really? For those who do not know, the term climax is frequently used in literature, film, art. It's part of the plot. Handed down from the Greeks, Aristotle. The rise in action after the inciting incident and the exposition. You may recall Freytag's pyramid. Very pinnacle, the apex, the climax. I gave the analogy of pouring water into a kettle, the exposition. When you put the kettle on the stove, that's the inciting incident. Just when Romeo realizes Juliet is a Capulet, not a Montague. Then you have all the rising action where the water gets hotter and hotter. You get it, where the administration's thinking this is about sex. And when it boils and whistles, then it's the climax. Then you take it off the heat and you pour it out. That's the resolution, the fall in action, or if you're French or precise or pretentious, you say denouement, the unraveling of the knot. The administration actually believed I was saying this, deliberately in a sexual perverted way. Oh boy. I'm a married man with 2 grown daughters in graduate school. Right, very successful. We're like aerospace and masters of public policy at the top schools in the country. And I've had one lover, my wife, my entire life, 31 years. And Father Tony at Christ Our Light, the Catholic Church, called me a model of Christian family. Now, I'm not a Catholic, but to get called that by, a priest, and when you're not a Catholic, that's pretty good. And yet they think I'm a sex addict or a sex fiend. Huh. I could kind of think about, the psychology behind this. Are they just, I don't know the word for it is. Projection? Is it projection? You're just, throwing, something on somebody that you actually have a problem with? Again, how can I explain motive? Anyway, I'm getting off the point. It still bugs me 2 years later. Anyway, I have no easy answers to why an entire school administration would collectively behave this way. It was petty, but I can't describe their motivation. I really don't know. My wife and other people, like my therapist Ray and my doc, Dr. Marrow, and the colleagues at the school said they just wanted to get rid of me. Okay, yeah. For over 10 years, the newspaper staff used school newspapers online, SNO, They're the largest provider of school newspapers in the country. They're phenomenal. They provide incredible customer service at a great price, less than printing one newspaper. But the school, the administration, called SNL as someone from the staff, as if they were someone from, to take the paper offline. The SNO agent who handled the call thought it was me, the advisor. But it was actually one of the several vice principals, the one in charge of student activities and sports. He was told to take it down. Just following orders, right? The editors and staff, a large staff, was outraged. They knew their rights. New Voices legislation in New Jersey, the Student Press Law Center, my former staffers, many now in the upper echelons of the media, many even met Mary Beth Tinker, who was involved in the Tinker versus Des Moines Supreme Court case from 1969. The thing that involved armbands and protest and Vietnam. The month or so, the paper went dark. On the following day of closing in our lake house, the long dream now becoming reality, the administration, without notifying parents or me, called the staff and editors into the office one by one to be questioned. Everyone was like, it was an article about writing. But the administration kept saying, yeah, but there was subtext, right? It was really about something else. I was furious. But I kept my cool as much as possible. I contacted Snow. Then I contacted the co-founder of Snow, Tom Hutchinson. At a journalism conference, I actually met him. I was furious. I felt betrayed. The staff, too, felt betrayed by the, quote, adults in the room. I even messaged former staffers now in the media to let them know. Nothing like power in numbers, right? This action was completely against state law in New Jersey, a state with stricter regulations and more protections for student journalists, teachers, and their advisors than the U.S. Constitution mandates. All right, it's 2025. We can kind of all laugh at that, right? States can't provide fewer rights than the Constitution, but they can provide more, and New Jersey does. But here's the thing. Tom Hutchinson was also very upset. It went against Snow protocol. I spoke 3 times with him, and Tom talked with the other co-founder, Jason Walstead, a former high school journalism advisor, someone just like me. I documented everything, including printouts, and shared with the editors. Tom Hutchinson at Snow admitted an employee took the newspaper offline without proper authorization. Protocols were not followed. All right, that's a passive voice. They spent an entire morning discussing the incident in their office in a meeting to prevent it from happening again. It's their credibility. The newspaper was reinstated, but in the meantime, the website displayed a message saying the paper was down for service. Yeah, that's BS, right? The message was misleading. It wasn't down for service. It was removed. I still laugh at this. It was removed due to the word Climax. I made sure to change the notice, clarifying that the administration had taken down the newspaper, apologizing for the delay, assuring readers it would be up again soon. And all this happened just before Christmas and the winter break. A holiday tea turns into an inquisition. After suspension due to COVID, the holiday tea was back. It's really the only time during the school year that teachers get together to chat and laugh, share stories. Students from band perform holiday music. Culinary arts students provide food. But did I enjoy this event? This is like my 25th year at this school and 4 years as a student. So we're talking 29 years at this place. This was my home. Now, I found myself in a formal hearing, a meeting dedicated to discussing the word climax. Is this absurd? I requested union representation. We do have a union, but they're not helpful at all. I sat there surrounded by administrators, with one of them dutifully taking notes while I recorded everything on my end on my smartphone. I still have it all, if anyone has any questions. I may even transcribe and use excerpts from this recording in the book I'm writing, Liberating the Unicorns, it's called. You get it. The superintendent showed up too, later, half an hour long, which only added to its surreal nature. And this was just days before a winter vacation. Everyone was having fun. Everyone was excited and socializing. And here I was at a congressional hearing, right? Like feeling like it's HUAC and I'm like being charged as a witch. That's what it felt like. I'm sorry. During this meeting, I found myself not so much answering questions as asking them back. I was direct. I was aggressive, because I don't take bullshit lightly, questioning the absurdity of the entire situation. I confronted them asking, how come you lied? They responded, we didn't lie. I replied, no. All of my journalists heard you say something different. I have the email to prove it. Then I pointed out how sad it was that my students knew they were lying. My students, my editors, are truly brilliant, right? They're like really smart. One's now it's at Cornell, one's at Rutgers. They're really, really smart kids, adults, and just sharp. And it's unfortunate that these talented students, who may even be smarter than some of the administrators, and I know they are aware of this dishonesty. Parents, some high-powered ones, as the school is fairly affluent, also got involved. That's what the kids told me. Much of the action happened when I was no longer at school, because there's a reason for that. My therapist and doctor both agreed teaching in this environment was taking its toll on my health. This job is killing you, Dr. Marrow said, and I've known Dr. Marrow for a long time. So I had 2 months of medical leave. At the time, I had 180 sick days. I'd never take off. And even when I probably should have, when my daughters were young and needed care, and I just relied, of course. My default sexism was like, oh, my wife can take care of that. No, I know that's wrong now. Guys, hear me out. That is wrong. All right, it's an unconscious bias. How fear replaced faculty trust. Our union contract states that if someone brings an issue to the administration, you have the right to know the accuser unless they decide not to follow the contract. Eventually, I found out that a Spanish teacher overheard students talking about it. He went to the director of guidance, I still laugh, just have to, who in turn went to my supervisor, who finally contacted me. Why didn't this teacher, the Spanish teacher, who I have worked with over the summer in Student Alliance for years, just approach me directly? Hey, Walter, I'm hearing some students talk about this thing in the online. Did you intend that to be satirical, or what's going on here? That would have resolved everything. I would have immediately addressed the issue, talked with the writer of the article, and suspended the essay until I investigated it. But many teachers in many schools are made to fear and distrust each other, right? And as Arthur Miller says, there are wheels within wheels and fires within fires in these places, right? It's in every institution, especially, I think, in a high school, where a lot of these people just never really graduated. That's another essay, and that's an opinion piece. To make matters worse, I learned later that the student, this funny junior and AP scholar, and a generally funny and clever guy I get along with, had intended for his use of Climax to have a sexual undertone as a form of satire. Okay, this got by me, and this got by the administration on its first go-through, and everyone else on the staff. I'm like, really? Okay. It actually isn't that funny if you don't realize it's supposed to be, like when you do satire, it's over the top. I know because I write satire. He thought it was clever, but it wasn't. And it was juvenile, puerile, and made me the focus of the imbroglio, right? I felt betrayed. But this was a 16-year-old. They are young. They are learning. They test their powers. But what about the alleged adults in the room? It wasn't immediately obvious to me. Maybe because I've forgotten what it's like to be a 14 or 15-year-old with thoughts often focused on sex. But I felt deeply betrayed. Betrayed by the student who put me in this position and by colleagues who didn't trust me enough. During the holiday tea, I finally said, do you realize just how insane this is? I pointed out the real issues facing our school. School ratings dropping, drugs, gangs, even cases involving real pedophiles. And yet, this is what we're focusing on? Is this really where taxpayer money should be going? We have a national issue retaining quality teachers because of situations like this. Educators, many with advanced degrees, who could make significantly more in other fields, choose teaching out of dedication, and yet they endure this type of nonsense. Would it be better for the country if more administrators left and left education to the actual educators? Whew. Sorry. Deep breath. I retired last year, but came back to teach full-time in college at, like I said, East Stroudsburg. It's been freeing, and I love and enjoy it. But I miss the everyday rhythm of high school and teaching high school. I miss many of my colleagues, and some of whom have retired and have moved on, just like me. Teaching has changed so much. We all hear that, right? I used to love the quality of teaching, the depth of knowledge, and the rigor of the content. In the past, I worked alongside colleagues who were so knowledgeable they could easily have taught at university. They knew literature, writing, one foot in the world of academia and letters, and the other, well, helping the youth, right? Helping our country maintain a democracy. Nothing that big, just that. I feel as I was the one of the last of that era holding the line. Now, I'm in an English department where we still have those conversations and engage in intellectual pursuits. My colleague across from me in the office, he taught in Japan. He speaks fluent Japanese and was a reporter in Japan for years, and has come back to the United States and doing the teaching thing. But some really truly gifted, smart people. But anyway, in many schools today, intellectual pursuits have taken a back seat. Priorities are skewed, and it's absurd. I think I'm almost done. This is a long lecture. Sorry. Leaving home meant finding teaching again. Looking back now from East Stroudsburg, 309 L Stroud Hall, I sometimes catch myself thinking about that word climax and what it all comes to represent. Not just the literary term that launched 1,000 administrative meetings. You get the illusion. But the turning point in my own story. 29 years at one institution, 4 as a student, 25 as a teacher. All those years, all those students, all those stories published in our award-winning paper. And one misinterpreted word, the camel and the straw. I think there's a song there. The beauty and the beast, the camel and the straw. But maybe that's too simple. Maybe it just wasn't about the word or even about the article. Was it actually the rapid erosion of trust in our educational institutions? The growing gulf between administrators and educators, teachers and parents, between what we say we value in education and what we actually prioritize. I think about those sports trophies lining the hallways, gleaming in their cases, while our newspaper's national awards gather dust on my messy desk. I think about how we've traded intellectual rigor for bureaucratic supervision, meaningful dialogue for surveillance and suspicion. My wife was right. Those 25 years weren't in vain. Each of those 3,500 students carries something forward. Maybe a love for writing, maybe the courage to question authority. This is America, or it was. Maybe just the memory of a teacher who believed in their voice. My former editors are scattered now across the country, some in prestigious newsrooms, Billboard, on the front page of the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, The Hill, the Philadelphia Inquirer, American Law Magazine. Oh, boy, it's just a lot. Others pursuing their own dreams, psychology, law, so many, teaching. They learned more than journalism in our classroom. They learned about integrity, about standing up for the truth, about the importance of asking questions even when, and especially when, those questions make people uncomfortable. Climax. Here at the university, I still teach writing, and I still encourage young voices to find their strength on the page. But something's different now. When I walk into my classroom, I don't feel the weight of suspicion on my shoulders. When I discuss literary terms, yes, even climax, I don't worry at all about administrative surveillance, or when the principal would peer into my classroom to see if anyone was wearing a hat or a hoodie or was on their phone. Really? It's like Ta-Nehisi Coates says, it's more about compliance, right, than education. That's why schools stink so much sometimes. And there's a freedom here, and hopefully in other places too that I'll go, that could still exist in education. I'm not sure in 2025 if it does exist. At least not. I maybe have to go to like Norway or Ireland or something. Thailand. Some nights, sitting by our lake house in the Poconos, watching the sun sink behind a Musig mountain range in the west, I think about Mr. Sunheimer, my own journalism teacher who passed the proverbial torch to me in 1999. I wonder what he would make of things and how things have changed. Would he recognize the profession he loved? Would he understand how a school newspaper advisor could be pushed out over a word? But then I remember something else he taught me. The story isn't over until you write the last word, huh? And while my chapter at the high school in New Jersey has ended, I'm not done writing yet, not by a long shot. Every semester brings new students, new voices, new stories waiting to be told. And here in this new chapter, I can finally focus on what matters most, teaching the power of words without fear of how they might be twisted. The irony doesn't escape me that it took leaving my home of 29 years to finally feel at home in my profession again. But maybe that's the real lesson in all of this, that sometimes the best way to honor your calling is to know when to change venues, to recognize when the institution you've served no longer serves the values that brought you here in the first place. When the Yankees are no longer the Yankees and may not appreciate or recognize Babe Ruth, well, it's time to leave. And I know I'm not, that's a bit grandiose, call myself Babe Ruth, but you know what I mean. And so many listening, reading, you kind of feel this way too, right? And as for that student who the article who sparked it all, I hope he's still writing, still pushing boundaries and finding his voice. I know he rewrote Macbeth in his senior year. It was even staged for his GT project. I didn't attend, but I did help him with some of the script. It's my nature. I help students with writing and with English and public speaking. But after all, isn't that what education should be about, right? Am I wrong, people? Or should we just have like AI do it? I think parents would still complain about AI. They just complain about everything. But not avoiding controversy. No, it's not. Let's not avoid it, but let's learn from it. Let's not suppress voices, but amplify them. Not fearing words, but celebrating their power to move us, challenge us, and yes, sometimes even set us free. Thank you, people. Hey everyone, Walter Bound here. Thank you. That's long. But I appreciate it if you stuck around, and if you can subscribe to my channel, that'd be fantastic. Support teachers. It's really hard out there. There are bad ones, but there are a lot of good ones. And the good ones are having a hard time. So, again, it's a challenging field. And challenging times, to say the least. But peace, people. Bye.